now from Hollywood, California, the horror capital of the world, the Boulet Brothers, creatures of the night.
Welcome, Uglies, to the final episode of the Boulet Brothers Creatures of the Night post-mortem recap. And I cannot believe that this season is already over. How about you all?
Oh, it truly has been a long, painful, and sadistic road, just the way we designed it. And I kind of can't believe we're here already either.
I feel the exact same way. I was getting really emotional watching the episode and re-listening to the podcast. I'm like, oh, I don't know that I'm ready for it to be over, mama.
It seemed like it went by so fast. Like, it seemed like it was like twice as fast as last season was. I don't know why.
I have a guess. It's because Halloween was almost like a speed bump in the middle of the journey, right? We were like halfway through 5 episodes in, and normally when Halloween rolls around, we're just getting started. So we would have like another almost month of Dragula, right?
That's true. Yeah, that's a good point.
I think the fans online were also relatively chill this season. The cast was cool. No salty sent home Sallies that we know of. An enjoyable experience all around.
It was. I actually want to say thank you to the fans because, you know, when we were making this season, it was off the back of season 5, which there was a lot of just, I don't know, online weirdness about everything. And everyone was being super sensitive about everything. And it was just hard to kind of have a good time with the show. And I feel like this season, the audience has approached the show with more of a sense of humor, and it was just a lot more fun for us, the cast, the crew, and the fans to watch. So I just want to say thank you to the fans for being very cool this year, and due to that, we will be rewarding you with a reunion for sure next year.
Oh my God, a treat.
I think they could have handled it this year. I almost would, I wish we could have went back in time and done it, but I really love that Dead by Daylight challenge, so I don't have any regrets.
Me too. Even though we could have bumped it to 8 and then done a reunion, I do want to say that I also agree that I think there's been a real evolution of the fan base, and things were toxic, not just on our show, but other reality shows, Housewives, like across the board. And hopefully we're turning a corner and people can take things maybe the way that they're intended. And I'm kind of proud of the fans. And I also want to just put this out there. I was quoted in the episode by saying, like, it might sound like punishment because it is. And in some ways it was. In other ways, it's our kind of like twisted way to protect the competitors, right? Because after a reunion, when your real feelings start pouring out, that's when the fan base, it's almost like you swat the wasp's nest, and people come out and they feel very strong about certain characters, and that's when they get attacked. And it's just the downside of being on TV. And we wanted to kind of protect the season 6 cast from those kind of attacks, but they didn't come. So next year, woo, reunion again.
I want to talk a little bit about the future of the podcast now that the season is over. In the past, we've taken a break after recapping the Dragula season on Creatures of the Night, but we are going to do first a final listener questions episode to answer anything outstanding from any of the fans for the season. And then we are going to keep going with our recaps and start a post-mortem on season 1 through season 3 and Resurrection.
It's happening.
Oh my God. So how many watches will this mark for the 3 of us?
For like seasons 2 and 3, I couldn't count.
Honestly, I mean, even for season 1, I remember when we redid the season for the remaster, I thought, oh, this is my 400th time seeing this episode.
Literally, I've seen every minute of footage because honestly 80% of the footage was used on season 1 versus season 6 where you have 80% more than you need. But yeah, so for listeners at home, you can know that we will still be here every week with you, starting with our listener questions episode, and then we're going to be picking up with the Boulet Brothers Dragula season 1. And I would suggest to watch the first 3 episodes on Shudder because they're kind of fast, and I think we can recap the whole season 1 in 2 episodes.
I totally agree. I'm a little giddy because I know that there's stuff that I just kind of like write out of my brain. Like I'm
Mhm.
no longer need that piece of information and it's gone. And when I go back and look at some things from seasons 1 and 2 in the earlier seasons, I laugh and then I'm like, oh my God, the look so gaggy even then, but also the audacity and the craziness of the shit that we were pulling back then and
Ooh.
the cringe of myself. I'm like, oh, I look at like just my performances or how far my drag has come, and I look back at that stuff, and even though I love it, I definitely cringe on the inside.
Oh, well, I love that you're able to also say that you love it because it's part of the magic of the show. Like the show has always been this wild, bestial animal. It's so good. Like I'm actually, ooh, am I getting really excited for season 1 again?
You sound
Ooh.
it.
Well, look, here's the thing. We didn't really have a voice to comment back to the fan base then because we didn't have the podcast. Remember, we started the podcast during the pandemic. So our first recap was for season 4. So we still have 1, 2, and 3 to cover. And so much went down on those seasons. Legendary rumors of bullshittery that I cannot wait to address.
Oh, yeah, there's some grimy stuff that definitely needs to be addressed that never has been. And we're gonna like retrace our steps and go back and like look at this period with some fresh eyes and a big mouth.
Exactly. But
Yes.
for now, we're going to focus on this grand finale of the Boulet Brothers Dragula season 666.
Yes.
All right, so I want to first talk to you all about each finalist and why you feel they made it to the finale. So why don't we start with Auntie? Ian, since we've talked a lot about these characters on the show, what's your take on Auntie's journey during the season?
Well, I think that they all won challenges and that's how they got to the end. No, I'm kidding. I think that Auntie is really fierce. I think that Auntie has impeccable drag. I think that Auntie really showed who she is both in the lab and on stage. I think that seeing Auntie here is a little bit of a no-brainer for me personally.
Yeah. What do you think, Swan?
I agree. I mean, I've been a fan of anti-heroin for years. I've known their drag. The look is so signature. I love it. I respect it. As a character, they've turned out to be a very kind of complex person, interesting and a little bit contradictory, right? You have a community leader who definitely has the language of keeping things even and maybe veering away from conflict, but at the same time themselves are very pointed and confrontational should someone bring their shit to her. So it's kind of like this complicated mix wrapped in an amazing drag. So for me, she absolutely earned her place in the finale.
Yeah, I second a lot of what you're saying in terms of, the look was always very strong. And I said it on the show, she is the drag queen. Like she is a drag queen to the 100th degree. Every, pad, rhinestone, nail, the makeup, everything's just flawless. And I like that she was very unafraid to share her opinions. I know it got her a little bit of grief online, but other people really resonated with her. So I think she has a strong character and a strong look.
Agreed.
What about gray matter?
Should I start on this one too?
Yeah, like did you think
Yes.
when you watched episode 1, did you think Gray would make it through to the end?
I did. I haven't gone back and re-listened to the cast reveal episode of Creatures of the Night, but I want to say that I'm not going to say pegged because I know how we feel about gray matter, but but I do feel like I saw top 3 material in gray matter. And I'm going to also say Auntie. I think Asia was the only one who I wasn't sure about, but going to gray matter, I think that they have such a stamped look. And as they said, like they are potentially at this stage, the creature winner that the show has never had. Like their drag is really polished and accelerated in a way that we've never really seen before.
Yeah, and I'm excited that the fans or, the drag fandom didn't harp too much on the non-gender conformity of Gray's drag because that means, things are moving forward, which I really appreciate.
Yeah, that was surprising, right? I thought for sure we would have this dialogue of like, well, is it drag and is it creature and is it
Right.
scare and like this and that, but no one questioned the art. So I thought that was a great step forward. And look, the art is extremely brilliant. Like Gray is so talented, like the vision and the technical, like both is just comes together, and he's so strong.
I agree. And then with Asia, I think to me, Asia is a perfect kind of competitor on the show because they come in, they're a little bit flawed. They're not afraid to get a little bit messy. They have very big ideas. You know, they have a strong tenant that they relate to, which in her case was Filth. And she has an interesting story. So to me, I felt like Asia, as we got to know her during the season, I think she absolutely earned her place in the finale.
Her drag is so good, and it just gets kind of fortified and buttressed up by this bubbly personality with vulnerability that is positive. I feel like Asia, whether the situation is grim or great, is kind of a light. And I think that light is inspiring.
I agree.
Absolutely.
All right, let's take a quick break. And when we come back, we are going to dig into this episode's finale floor show. Stay tuned.
We have returned to Uglies, and it's time we start off with Asia's favorite tenet of Dragula, the Filth floor show.
Yeah. So what did you think of the Filth floor show this year, Ian? You've seen all of them, obviously. So I'm curious to hear your opinion.
Well, like Asia Consent, Filth is my favorite tenet of Dragula, and I feel like this cast delivered on Filth. And the thing I really loved is they all did Filth in a very different way and in their own way. I mean, there was a little bit of connective tissue, I think, with like a little bit of gastrointestinal issues, but overall, I'm like, you like that? I'm like, I see everyone's drag here, and I'm not going to call anyone out, but I think that there have been years where someone's Filth floor show is like they're playing pretend with Filth.
Yeah.
Versus this, I'm like, oh shit, like this is each competitor's Filth moment.
Yeah, I agree. And to me, compared to previous seasons Filth floor show, I don't think we've seen anything this disgusting since maybe season 2 even. How do you all feel about that?
I look at season 6 as the Filth season. Like in Swan's book of the seasons, season 6 is just marked Filth. It has been Filth even when the Q wasn't a Filth challenge, like somehow they imbued dolls and monsters and everything had like a Filth element to it. So, and Ian, you said the operative word. There was so much poo, right? And especially in the Filth floor show, it was just wild to see how people interpret that word and how it comes out in their art.
Well, I'm surprised Ian hasn't talked about gray matter milking himself.
I'm gonna be real with you, Dracmorda. I am chomping at the bit. I'm sitting here. I'm like, just don't mention gray. Don't mention gray. I can't deal with this milkman, milk me fantasy. I'm like, I see you, you little freak.
Look, all three of them did really disgusting floor shows, which I really appreciate. They didn't just bring a look to the stage, they brought a performance, and that is what we're looking for in these last challenges.
The surprise for me was how much Auntie's stood out to me. And I think Auntie's glamour curveball under the Filth floor show was such a standout. It was so kind of gorgeous, and I loved the kind of sickly color green. And it was like this weird juxtaposition between like this very refined, poised person just kind of deep diving into their weakness. And then it shot out her butt in the form of a huge, like, distended intestine. And there you have it.
I wrote, Auntie, giant prolapse and even bigger earrings, which
it's a tapeworm.
Okay, I will say I forgot that it was supposed to be parasites until the mealworms came out of the cake, which, by the way, that reveal to me was impeccable. I was like, wow, like I'd forgotten that the parasite was the thing. I was like, okay, this is like kind of strange and kind of weird. And then when she lifted that first handful of cake out, I saw the mealworm. I was like, oh, right. Not a fisting accident. this is Parasites. Got it.
I think Auntie stole Filth. I really do.
Interesting.
Wow. Ooh.
So let's move on to the horror floor show. Who was a standout for you, Ian?
Well, I have to give a very special shout out to whoever edited the floor show for horror, because there's a sound that's used that's called a Wilhelm scream, and I adore it. It's like such a fun detail. Like, as a film nerd, I literally paused the episode. I was like, oh my God, a Dragula first. But that editor aside, I think that I'm going to go with Asia. Swan, I'm going to bat the ball back to you on this one. You said this during deliberation. Asia's horror was original. And I don't think we've ever seen someone so flawlessly execute a very sensitive topic in the horror category so well.
Yeah, it really reflected like a vulnerability, like that I mentioned earlier. Telling a personal story like that visually without any words and doing it like in a kind of like in a striking artistic way. Just she took that opportunity to tell a personal story that might help other people, and I just respect that.
What did you think of Gray's look, Ian?
I wrote double wig reveal, Cenobite, and a titty plate reveal. And I just thought it was cool. This is not a slight on either Gray or Auntie. I did think that both Gray and Auntie gave looks that I think could have fit into the Horror Icons challenge, which not necessarily a bad thing, but I really felt like Asia clinched that win for that specific challenge.
I think so too.
What would Auntie's icon have been?
Mars Attacks.
Oh, okay. I thought we were still talking about film. Okay.
Oh, okay.
I was like the fancy lady with the worm cake. But I gotcha.
Oh my God. Wait, fancy lady with the worm cake. And that's Dragula, honey.
Right? We talked about our opinions on the episode, obviously, but just to reiterate, I mean, I was very happy with the horror floor show as well. I mean, I think Gray's multi-level reveal was fantastic. Obviously, Asia's story was super compelling. And I like that Auntie's was kind of campy because that's her style.
Yeah, totally. I mean, Gray's was an absolute SFX flex, which was really fun. And I loved it. But I think Asia stole horror.
I do too.
Yeah.
So let's move on to Glamour.
Ooh, ladies, Glamour.
Yeah. I have to say, this was probably my favorite Glamour finale floor show ever.
Yeah, I'm gonna like see that and then up the ante heroin here. I think this was like collectively the season 6 finale. I think is the best finale, if not the best one of the. I think they can stand up to any other season.
I am going to double down. I'm going to triple diva down on this. I wrote strongest top 3 of the series.
Yeah.
And it was impeccable. That's the third time I've used that word today. It was impeccable. But we had a top 4 in season 4, and that was great. But for top 3s, diva, unmatched.
Yeah, I agree. Is there anything else you wanted to say about any of the final floor shows, Ian?
I think everything has kind of been said. I thought that y'all's deliberation, first of all, your deliberation look was super glamorous. Loved seeing y'all. And other than that, I mean, the only thing I do want to say is I really like that Asia is a nerd. And I don't know that it's specifically a reference, but when I saw her, I was like, Mama is giving Sarah Kerrigan, Queen of Blades, very StarCraft. And I Googled a picture and I was like, oh, absolutely the inspo. Like this ossuary goddess, crown her right there in that outfit.
In the glam look?
Yes.
Oh my God. Like so incredible. Like I was actually, when Gray Matter came out, I was like, oh shit. If there's a glamour thief, it was definitely Gray, which is kind of interesting. Now you go back, you look at Auntie stole Filth and Asia stole horror. And I kind of think Gray stole glamour. And when I say stole, I just mean like they performed in a tenet that they're not necessarily like known for. And I thought Gray's was just, it was incredible from head to toe. But then Asia came out and exactly, she looked like this deadly arachnid queen from the netherworld. It was so cool.
I agree. I also want to give a little special shout out to Gray Matter because I think Gray Matter's glamour was just perfection. It was so detailed and beautiful, and the little furs and just everything was kind of perfect. I thought he did a great job.
It
Absolutely.
really was.
All right, so ultimately we crowned Asia Consent as the world's next drag super monster. So let's talk a little bit about that. Ian, what did you think of the final decision?
My heart was racing. And obviously, every season I know who is going to win, unless something happens with the file, which that is definitely a fear that I've had. But this is the first time where I was like, oh my God, like who's it going to be? And I think that's testament to the competition this year. It's testament to y'all's decisions to put everyone on the show and just how well this top 3 did. I thought it was anyone's race. That being said, I do think that you made the right decision. Everyone could have been a winner, but I think that Asia is absolutely the winner of the season.
Very good. Yeah, I mean, obviously we think that too, since, we crowned her.
I was gonna ask. I was like, what do you guys think? Like Asia, huh?
That makes the finale recap kind of strange because everybody knows exactly our thought process and where we ultimately land. So yeah, tee-hee, them's the rules.
I would say too, Asia wasn't just quiet. A lot of times people will say the person that wins is the one that's quiet and stays out of everything and all that stuff. I don't really
Landon.
But I don't think Asia did that. I think Asia shared her opinions. She got in them up with everybody and had fun. And she showed a lot of growth during the season, which I love to see that.
Yeah,
for sure. She shared her darkness too, and she shared like the bruises that life has kind of served her, but she still stayed fierce and stayed focused and stayed positive through it all and delivered some deadly ass looks, and she earned that crown.
So any last thoughts on the season as a whole from either of you?
The best. We just keep getting better. I don't know what the hell next season could be, but like let's pat on all of our backs.
Ooh, yes, pat it, mama. I will say one of the only other things that I wrote down for my notes was during the recap of the long, difficult, sadistic, and painful journey, I was looking at the exterminations and thinking, this season was really hardcore. Like I think this season had some of the best drag we've ever seen on the show, both from the competitors, which, important, but also from y'all. You looked amazing.
Oh, thank you.
I mean, we should actually talk about it, but the thing that also really elevated the season was the exterminations. I mean, diving with sharks and just having tarantulas on set for a fright feat, not the main extermination. I was like, oh, got it. We have decided to really go to hell this year.
It's true. I didn't notice it when we were in production. I think I've said this on the podcast before, but we just wanted everything to be bigger and better and to push it as far as we could. And so we were just actively from challenge to challenge trying to make that happen. And it wasn't until we got to the end and I started seeing episodes air and I was like, damn, we really did not cut any corners on anything this year.
Yeah, I think there was a moment during editing, like when we were like past like the 3/4 mark, and Drac, you kind of pulled me aside and said that. You're like, oh my God, like we literally just kind of pushed all the levels to 10 this year.
Yeah. And I think too, in terms of the show's format, I was very happy with it. I'm happy that we have a return to some fun drama. I'm happy that we have some gamification of the show so it can evolve a little bit. I think it worked really well, and I want to lean heavier into that next season. If anybody, I just want to say this now, if anybody wants a drag crafting show, please don't watch the show because it's not for you. That's not the show we want to make, and it's not for you. That's it. Go make a craft show.
So we're about to take our second break of the show, but before we go, I just want to extend from us to all 3 finalists a huge congratulations. There could only be one winner, but I think that all 3 of our finalists really showed up and delivered an incredible piece of entertainment, and I couldn't be more proud. Okay, be right back. All right, my dirty little darlings, we have returned. And before we go on, I want to just issue a last chance for any outstanding lingering questions in regards to this season of the show before we close the chapter. We'll be doing a final listener question episode next week, so send your questions to creatures@bouletbrothersdragula.com, and we'll try and answer them all on air next week. Ian, would you do the honors?
Oh, of course, I would love to. Lauren writes, I'm a mental health counselor, and so I love when anything about mental health or addiction is discussed in a healthy and realistic way in media. I appreciate you airing the conversation that Gray and Auntie had in the most recent D&D challenge because it can encourage others with similar stories trying to face their own trauma and harmful patterns. My question is, how do you guys behind the scenes promote a safe place for individuals on their sobriety journey? Do you ask them during the application process about their substance use? Do they have access to resources during their time on Dragula? Have you ever made a decision about someone's time on the Boulet Brothers Dragula due to concerns about addiction?
Okay, that's quite a few questions. Let me try to remember all of them so I can answer them. Yes, we are aware of issues they may be dealing with before they come on the show. Yes, they do also have access to services should they need it. They also are not forced to do anything. Like if there's liquor involved anytime, there's always a sober version. So we provide that as well. And I don't think that I can recall anyone's addiction issues has played into them going home. No, I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. Although I do want to reference Swan's crystal ball because I thought someone in seasons past might have a hard time on the show when they were cast, and it was like, okay, I put my judgment aside, but it turned out I was correct.
Oh, I don't know why I thought you were going to go the other way with that.
Right? I know.
Did it feel like that? I was like,
Yeah.
no. Like, I think we take the time, at least I take the time to think about their mental health, not just with concerns of addiction, but, coming onto a show. I don't want to sound like a broken record, but there really are some downsides to being on TV, and you really have to kind of build up the thickness of your skin in order to be able to handle everything that's going to be coming your way, because the love isn't served alone. There's a lot of hate that comes with it too.
Max from Ottawa asks, during a previous episode of the podcast, you all talked about how part of the casting process involves battling it out for the monsters you want to see on the season. Are there any monsters that fans would be shocked to learn were heavily debated before getting cast?
Yes.
I think that's
They were from this season. Yeah, they were from this season. Yeah. A couple, honestly, because like we said before, we had this whole wild cards thing, and I think we each got different stuff from them, like if one person talked to them, they got one thing. If another person talked to them, they got another thing. And that's the whole wild card of it all. Is I'm like, who are we casting here? Like, does anybody have a solid idea? And I remember at the last minute, we're like, I don't care. We're just casting all of them. Just cast all of them. And it was crazy. And I'm glad we did because it turned out well.
Yeah, it was great.
Callahan from Nova Scotia writes, I was listening to this week's podcast, and you mentioned wanting to have fan art in your podcast studio for fans to see. Are there video versions of the Creatures of the Night podcast that I do not know about? How can I see your beautiful faces?
Oh, Callahan, the myth, the legend of Creatures of the Night on video. We've talked about it so many times. It's come close to actually happening, but no, you are not missing anything that's out there. It hasn't been created yet, but we do have aspirations to do it.
I hope that we can do it while we're recapping like maybe season 2 or something. So hopefully we'll get there in the next month or two.
Megan from Wisconsin writes, Season 666 really does feel like a return to the roots of the show as promised, in no small part because I just love this cast of ghouls. Earlier this season, you said that every single one of the monsters cast this season came from the, quote, wild card folder. Can you share a little bit more about why individual contestants were in that folder? Audition tapes, past performances, etc.
I made mention of this before, to the fact that there was a while where Drac and I were really entrenched in the drag scene, kind of almost globally. Like, we knew every drag queen in every city. We booked a ton of them on a weekly basis for years, and we were just really connected to all those different communities. But that started to be less and less as the rise of Dragula, the television show, came about. Like, our footing in the nightlife space started to to kind of diminish. And that's when our vision became a little foggy. Like, well, who are these people? I don't know what role they play in their city. I don't know what niche they might fill in the Dragula world. So they kind of came more mysterious to us because we weren't as connected as we were previously.
For me, I think it was about them being almost like more like season 2 contestants, if that makes sense. And what I mean by that, like, they weren't like, I'm picking the most perfect looking drag queen, Instagram looking drag queens from the universe, and I'm going to have them compete. It wasn't like that. We were looking for people that were relatable and human and raw. And so, you know, they were a little messy at times. And so we just really didn't know what we were going to get when they got here. And then they ended up blowing us away with their looks.
Dawn Bromley writes, I am a 57-year-old mother of non-binary twins, and I want to thank you both for being the incredible people you are. Watching the Boulet Brothers Dragula has been transformative for me, not just for its beauty and inclusivity, but for the hope it gives me for my children's future. Knowing there are people like you in the world makes me feel safer for them and inspired by the creativity and grace you promote. You've truly changed my life and given me something real to look up to. Thank you, mothers of monsters. Long may you reign.
Damn, that actually stirred me a little bit. Feeling a little emotional. I want to return that sort of thank you for existing, because I think to be a 57-year-old mother of non-binary twins in this world, in this moment, is a very difficult thing. And it just sounds like, from your language and the things that you're choosing to say, your response to what we've created, that you're nurturing and open. And I think so many more parents need to be that for their children. And I commend you for it.
Clifton from Rockford writes, I know that y'all and the cast of the Boulet Brothers Dragula have a big presence at Midsummer Scream, but would you ever consider presenting or having a booth at some of the more haunt industry-focused trade shows like the Trans World Halloween and Haunted House Trade Show in St. Louis, or Midwest Haunters Convention in Chicago?
I absolutely love haunts and dark rides and all that stuff. So as much of that as we can be involved in, the better, in my opinion. But those shows in particular are usually centered around haunted attractions. So if we were attached to a haunted attraction on an upcoming year, for example, then I think it makes sense for us to be there. But otherwise, I don't know, maybe we could host some panels or things like that. But having a booth there, I'm not sure it would be a fit.
I'd totally be down to do that too. I love haunted houses and anything from the haunt world. And until we make the Boulet Brothers Haunted Mansion in LA, we can show up and do panels or whatever other way we might be appropriate.
Lyndall from South Africa asks, Good day, Boulet residents. I have a question for the ladies of the house. If season 1, 2, and 3 had exorcisters, who would they be and why?
Oh, that's a good question. I haven't given this any thought, so I'm just going to jump out and say them, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Season 1 for me would be Pinche. Season 2 would probably be Erica Clash. And season 3 would be Hollow Eve.
Oh my God.
Honestly, Drac, I feel like you opened the crystal ball with that one, Diva.
No, season 3 would have been Priscilla Chambers for sure.
Okay, I think I'm going to agree with you on season 3, but that's the only place that I'll agree, because season 1 for me would be Meatball, and season 2 for me would be Disasterina. And I'd have to agree, even though she made it to top 3, Priscilla would be for season 3.
Yeah, I'm going to say season 1 for me, I think, would be Frankie Doom. Season 2, I'm going to say Abora. And
wow.
I just think that would be a real fun curveball for exorcister duties. And season 3, I agree, would be Priscilla.
Abora is such great TV, but I cannot imagine him as a presenter. Like, because he always tries to put like a weird spin on it to make everyone uncomfortable. And I'm like, that does not work for this.
Well,
it would be so weird.
For everyone else's drag to be as strange and off the mark as their drag.
I'm like, wait, is Abora as exorcister kind of amazing?
Oh my goodness.
Now, I have a question for you, Ian.
Okay.
I want to hear your answers, but I also want to ask you, if we were to do a Titans 2, do you think the exorcister should come from Titans 1 or from season 6?
Oh. I think from season 6.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I think from season 6, because even though obviously they are two separate series within the franchise itself, I think that obviously we're getting our casts from, there's like interplay there. And I don't know. I think that Titans has some sour Senho or some salty Senhom Sallies, and I love season 6. So I don't know. Witch Poppy from Cleveland, Ohio writes, I was utterly captivated by your look on episode 9, particularly the makeup and facial transformation. Could you share how long the transformation process took?
Well, first of all, let's talk about this name Witch Poppy, because girl, I live.
I think it was like 4 hours, maybe. Does that sound right?
Yeah, it sounds right that it was 4 hours to get into that look, but this took like weeks of planning because we had to do full bust life casts, so that those molds could be made and then it could be sculpted and poured. So it's quite a process. All right, my darlings, that's all the time we have for this episode. Thank you all for joining us on this season 666 post-mortem recap spree. I just want to remind you that next week we'll be doing all of the remaining listener questions for the season, and picking up right after that, I think this is very exciting, we will be recapping starting back on season 1. Those episodes are kind of short, so we're going to be doing episodes 1, 2, and 3. And as a reminder, if you have any listener questions, please send them to creatures@BouletBrothersDragula.com, and we'll do our best to answer them all. Thank you for joining us, always.
The Boulet Brothers Creatures of the Night is hosted and produced by Mortem and Swantula Boulet, along with co-host Ian de Vogler, with music by Neuron Spectre.